Welcome to the show, everyone. Really pleased today to have a really special guest, Daniel Priestley, who is a pretty famous entrepreneur, a best-selling author of at least 4 books, and he's one of the founders of Dent Global. And he's a global expert on personal branding, entrepreneurship, and a lot of topics. So really pleased to have you on the program, Daniel. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on the program, Stephen.
Great. Looking forward to this discussion. So I've been reading your book, Key Person of Influence, and really enjoyed it. There's a lot of big concepts in there, but also a lot of like practical micro steps, and it's quite detailed, very practical book, and it really got a lot out of that. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit and some of the concepts in there. So I thought we might start with, where do you see entrepreneurs struggling, and what sort of problem does this concept solve?
Yeah, so the entrepreneur journey is very predictable, and there's 3 key phases in that journey. And the first phase is discovering something of value and actually having something that solves a problem for people, something that is useful to people. And that's that first phase of value proposition.
Yep.
The second phase is becoming an influencer in that space, making sure that people know you, like you, trust you, want to come to you for that solution, raising profiles. So that's, that's the difference between, say, a management consulting firm and Stephen Covey, who wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, having a management consulting firm, right? So it's creating something of value and then becoming an influencer in that space.
Yes.
And then the final piece is about establishing assets. So developing a business that runs on assets, developing a business where you've formalized your brand and your culture, you've formalized your systems, and you've formalized your position in the marketplace. And that means your business is ready for sale or ready for scale, and it runs on its assets. So it's a 3-part journey, and where most business owners make the biggest mistake is getting caught up in part number 1 and not transitioning. So essentially, part number 1 is building something of value, solving problems for people, turning up and being helpful. And so many businesses are great at that. They've got 15, 20 years experience at helping people. They've got great success stories and case studies. You throw a problem at them, they know how to fix it. And that's wonderful that so many businesses do that. And most of our clients are fabulous at creating value. They're just not great at becoming influential for that.
Right.
So it's about transitioning to the next phase.
It's
which
about
allows
scaling.
you to
It's about scaling beyond your own sort of 40, 50, 60 hours a week that you put into it. Is that what it's about? Getting beyond?
It's a bit of a mindset shift. So, you could, if you put 40 to 60 hours into being an influencer, you can certainly scale a personal brand, but it's about rather than being good at something, it's about other people knowing that you're good at that. And
okay,
it's an interesting one. A lot of people, they're very modest and very humble, which is a wonderful quality, and it's a great quality to have. But also potentially to their detriment, so that they're just afraid to tell people that they're really good at what they do. They're afraid to share their success stories. They're afraid to publish a book, and they might have some mind chatter going on where they're thinking, I could write a book, but I know someone else who's written a book and they're better than I am, or I know someone else who puts videos out and they're better on camera than I am. So they hold back and they just stay doing their do.
Yeah.
So that locks you into, if all you do is value based, if all you're doing is creating value, you end up commoditized in your pricing. You end up competing with everyone else. You end up in a bit of a race to the bottom as far as how cheaply you can do it and how many hours a week you can work.
Yes. Yeah, I think what you said there's really relevant to a lot of the work I do. Like, I work with a lot of sales folks, and there's a lot of salespeople, sales leaders listening to this. And what I find is that they do underestimate their unique value that they can bring. And I know that's something you talk about, that everyone actually has something of value. They should have a voice, right? Maybe could you expand on that a little bit?
Well, we use the metaphor that people are standing on a mountain of value, but they have a problem called proximity bias. And proximity bias is that when you're up close with something, you have a different perspective of its value. So if you're standing on a mountain, you can't actually see the mountain. You can see everything but the mountain.
Yes.
If you, I'll give you an example of proximity bias. My father-in-law has a Rolex that he bought in 1969, and he's worn it every day since 1969. It's a beautiful old Rolex Submariner. Now, because it's an antique, it happens to be worth something like £25,000. And and what annoys me is that he wears it every day, and I think to myself, you're wearing this thing that's worth £25,000. If I gave you a £25,000 watch, or if I told you that you had to spend £25,000 in order to buy that particular watch and wear it, would you still be wearing a £25,000 watch while mowing the lawn?
Yes. You're in the UK, so not the beach. Yeah, mowing the lawn. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So he would totally go down the beach and wear his £25,000 Rolex Submariner to the beach, because in his mind, it's just the watch that he bought for a few £100s in 1969.
Yes.
He doesn't think of it as a £25,000 antique. He just thinks of it as his everyday watch. Now, what's interesting is that when I see a lot of people in business, and salespeople in particular, they're walking around with really valuable stories. They're walking around with really valuable insights, intellectual property, case studies, examples that would be hugely valuable to everyone else. But they just think of, oh, well, that's just my everyday. That's just my normal story. So it's like they're walking around with a £25,000 Rolex on, but in their mind, it's just like an ordinary everyday thing.
Sure.
So it's that proximity bias.
No, and I see salespeople, they deal with so many customers. Let's say they've been selling in an industry for 10 years. Maybe they've sold to 100 or 500 customers in that industry. That's far more contact with solving those customers' problems than any one customer has, right? So that's sort of
actually become an expert.
Yeah, exactly.
In many ways, they're an expert in a particular problem. They know more about the problem and the solution than the customer.
Yes.
So there's another phenomenon as well, which is about people getting to know and like and trust people. And that's another reason that salespeople should absolutely position themselves as a key person of influence, because humans want to do business with humans. We want to do business with faces.
Yep.
We want to get to know people. There's a little activity that I always do in front of audiences where I say, without looking, what color is the Google logo, the G in the Google logo? If we were to say, spell out the letters of Google, and the G is always one color. It's always this particular color. So what color is it?
You're asking me, is it yellow?
It might be.
But I'm not sure.
Or is it green?
I see it every day, but I haven't taken notice of it.
So the funny thing is it's blue.
It's blue. Okay.
Right. So it's always blue. Every time it's always been blue.
Yep.
But what's funny is that we've seen this logo maybe 10,000 times at least, and we don't register it. So human brains are not really connected to brands and symbols and fonts and all that sort of stuff. What we like is people and faces. We like to get to know humans.
Yes.
And actually, it's quite interesting that Google, with all of its technology and all of the billions of dollars worth of resources it has to spend on automation, has armies and armies and armies of salespeople. So the way Google works is that they send out $50 credit in the mail, physical mail. Like, it's really funny. You get this in the mail.
Right.
And Google doesn't do things that don't work. Like, Google measures everything.
Sure.
So you get a $50 credit in the mail to spend some money on advertising. and then you activate the credit, and then within 24 hours, you get a phone call from someone who says, "Can I talk you through how to use the credit effectively?" Now, what that's doing is it just shows you that of all the things that they can automate, they just can't automate that person on the phone. And mind
Right.
you, they are trying. Humans love to buy from humans. We love to talk to people. We love to feel special. We love to feel that our needs are heard.
Sure.
Right. So it's really important. Now, what you can do though is you can leverage yourself. So most salespeople are not employing leverage. They're not leveraging their personal brand so that they're known, liked, and trusted by most people or more people. So in 2016, did you feel sad when David Bowie passed away, or
Yes.
Robin Williams passed away?
Yeah.
And Prince
Yeah,
passed away. Muhammad Ali passed away.
Yeah, I remember Ali. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel sad when you heard that news?
I did actually.
Yeah. So here's the question.
Yes.
Did you ever spend personal time with Muhammad Ali, Prince, David Bowie?
No, of course.
Like,
not.
did you ever go around to their, when they were in town, did you pop into the hotel and have
It's weird.
catch up for a beer?
Yeah, I don't know why I was sad, but yeah, something was lost.
Because the reason you were sad is because the brain doesn't know that it's digital. It doesn't know that your perception and your experience of that individual is a digital perception. So you feel sad about David Bowie because you listened to a recording of David Bowie's music, you read magazines about David Bowie, you saw photos or images or video of David Bowie, you probably saw footage of Muhammad Ali's fights, you probably saw audio recordings of Muhammad Ali delivering one of his iconic poems.
Yes.
And because you heard and saw that stuff digitally, you feel a sense of sadness that someone you know has passed away, even though you don't know them. So the brain doesn't know that it's digital. We haven't evolved yet to figure out the difference between a real interaction and a digital interaction. So what happens is that when a salesperson fails to put video on the internet or to record a podcast or to write a blog, they're not leveraging their personal brand and leveraging their insights. It makes it very difficult that the only way you can experience that salesperson is by meeting them face-to-face, one-to-one. So they're applying no leverage.
Right. Okay.
The truth is if you can close a sale one-to-one, face-to-face, you can actually do a lot of the sales conversation using video, blogs, audio. You actually have you have the words, you have the stories, you've got the insights, you've got all of that. And if you can sell one-to-one, you can actually leverage that online.
Yeah, and we see some trend with video being used more and more by sales, and this sort of these video messaging or video email apps and this type of thing. And it is quite effective. I know I've responded to a couple in the last couple of months. Where folks send a video email. You're seeing a real person. You're seeing their personality, their character.
I'm seeing a lot in Australian real estate sales, for example.
Oh yeah.
They build personal brands. They put their face on the bus shelter. They put their face on all the ads. They create video content online. They build Instagram followings. So these salespeople in the real estate sector, they're very, very they're actually getting quite good at building personal brands because they know that personal brands sell houses. But it's not exclusive to the sales sector. You could be a partner at an accounting firm. You could be selling consulting packages. You could be in solution selling. You could be in medical device selling. So there's all sorts of parts of the sales process that you could create content. You could create social media engagement, all of that sort of stuff to become the go-to person within a particular product category.
Sure. So Daniel, let's talk about something you talk about is you're focusing on building a brand versus building your career, and I'd like to dig into that, especially for folks that are maybe working in a bigger company. And I know it's still relevant for them, right, to be building their own brand, independent or in sync with the company. But what are your thoughts?
Brand and a career.
Yeah.
So building a career was all about picking one organization, and doing really, really good work, hard work, impressing your boss,
Yep.
getting more and more qualifications, attending the courses, doing anything that was asked of you, and then working your way up the ladder. So, starting out as, like, my grandfather started out as an apprentice, and then he became a junior, and then he was a apprentice engineer, and then a foreman and a factory manager, and then he became the general manager of the factory. And I think he had something like 400 people working in his factory at one point, and he was the general manager. But it took 40 years, and for 40 years he stayed with one company, and he worked his way up from apprentice to general manager. So the opposite of that, or the different approach, is to build a brand, which is to become more known, liked, and trusted to more people, to be blogging, to be creating video content, to write a book, to really make yourself the go-to person. Now, what happens in the society that we're in at the moment, which is very digital, digital, the mobile phone is the center of our experience in our world. It's where most people spend 2 to 3 hours per day looking at their mobile phone. So if you exist powerfully as a digital entity, as a digital brand, you attract so many opportunities that very rapidly you can move country, you can move career, you can move employer. So essentially the value of anything is the value of demand and supply. So, why did Kylie Jenner make $1 billion? Because she had 100 million followers on Instagram, and she had 100,000 makeup kits, and she basically told her 100 million followers that she had 100,000 makeup kits, and they all went and bought them at a profitable price. So it was an imbalance of demand and supply. Why is it that there are certain executives who get paid $1 million a year? Because there's 2 companies that want to pay them $1 million a year, right?
Yep.
And if those 2 companies are bidding, it doesn't really matter whether they have an MBA from Harvard or any of that. All of that's just noise. The reason a person gets paid $5 million a year is because someone offered 3, and then someone offered 4, and then someone offered 5, and no one offered 5.5.
Yes.
And the demand and supply forced their value through the roof. So if you're not creating any scenarios where there's a demand and supply imbalance on your time, on your labor, on your insights, then essentially the marketplace is just going to set a commoditized rate. So if in your industry the normal pay is $80,000 a year, and there's no real reason for anyone to pay you more than $80,000 a year, let's say, you're essentially at the whim of the market for your value, and you've not given.
You're a price taker, if you like.
Yeah, you're a price taker. You're not a price maker.
Yeah.
So where you become highly valuable is where you create a scenario where people say, "There's only one of you, and I want that one of you. I want you with your stories and your brand, your connections and your insights and your methodologies, and the people who follow you. I want you, and I really see the value in you, and I don't care what anyone else gets paid. I want to pay you double that because I want you." So you've got to build a brand if you want that to happen. You can't just expect some sort of employer or customer to just go, "Oh, look, I magically see the potential in you because I've when I put on my glasses, you've just got this rainbow around you." It's like, that's not going to happen.
Sure. Yeah. So you build your value, build your brand. Your career will take care of itself.
Yeah, if you build a brand, you'll have. I mean, look, it's pretty wild, right? So I actually don't have a huge brand. I've written 4 best-selling books and all of that sort of stuff. I've got 25,000 followers on Instagram, and I've got 25,000 followers on Twitter, and I've got roughly that on Facebook, and ballpark, I've got about 25,000 people who know me, like me, trust me. They've read my books, and if you add it all up, there's about 25,000 people who find me of interest or know who I am, properly know who I am. But I tell you what, the flood of opportunities that keep coming, I mean, we're not talking millions or even hundreds of thousands of people. We're just talking about, from 25,000 people, we're just talking about a non-stop barrage of stuff that hits my inbox. It just doesn't stop. It just keeps coming and coming and coming. yeah, and it's all great stuff. It's all high value stuff.
Mm. It's
Um,
it's a very relevant audience then.
yeah,
That's what you're
it's an
attracting.
audience who follow my. I'd say a lot of the 25,000 have read all 4 books,
Yeah.
um, but the point is that you don't need lots and lots of people in order to have a pretty good demand, on time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Daniel, one concept that I'd like you to explain, and this is vitality versus functionality. And I think it sort of builds a bit on what you're just talking about.
Yeah, so we're trained in school to create value through functionality, not vitality. So if we just go to the definition, functionality is anything that can solve a problem. It's functional. It does the job.
Yes.
Vitality has 2 definitions in the dictionary, and that are relevant. One of them is the life force. So if you have something that is the vitality, vitality is known as life force, and the other one is essential. So
Okay.
if you have a vital organ, it's essential. you
Mm.
can't you can't do
Yep.
without it. Or if there is a vital ingredient in the recipe, you can't make the recipe without that ingredient. It's a vital ingredient.
Yes.
So what vitality means is to become the irreplaceable life force of what you do.
Mm.
So when someone's functional, it means that they're the replaceable functional element, right? So
Right. Like
if
something
I
that gets
said
commoditized or something that can.
commoditized, right? So it's
Yeah.
replaceable. So if I said I need a cameraman for a film shoot,
Yep.
right? So that's someone who's there's probably an hourly rate for a cameraman, and essentially anyone who can hold and point a camera to a degree is a cameraman.
Yep.
If I said I need a cinematographer, right now we're just into that kind of more elite level. If I said I want James Cameron,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Now we're at the absolute vital life force and energy. If it's interesting, I'm just using James Cameron as an example, but there was a whole bunch of Terminator movies that flopped, that James Cameron had nothing to do with. And then James Cameron's come back to make a final Terminator film,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a huge success because it's James Cameron who's making it.
Sure.
Right? So he has this ability to create stuff that works. It's his ability to pull together talent that wouldn't otherwise work with the project.
Mm.
It's his ability to have certain insights on the story. So he is an irreplaceable life force for getting a result.
Yeah.
So I know this is weird, and it feels really weird to talk about this stuff because most of us went to 12 years of school, where if they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you said, I want to be the irreplaceable life force of my industry. I want to create totally unique things that no one else is doing. I want to leverage stories that no one else can tell. They would look at you like you're just completely mad. They'd beat it out of you physically.
Yes.
Most of us have the experience that you would never, ever own up to the idea of being the irreplaceable life force of something. And yet, that's where all the money moves. The money moves towards people who are hard to replace. They're hard to do business without them.
Yes.
You get a completely different result if they're involved versus if they're not involved. That's what I mean by being vital.
I think a really powerful concept. Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you said like, and I'm using extreme examples, but if you said we're going to set up a business and we're thinking of having Richard Branson involved, right? Well, it's obvious that you would get a completely different result if Richard Branson was involved versus not involved. And if I said we're thinking of setting up a business and we're just going to get Joe Bloggs to come and be the salesperson, but it might as well be Mark Clogs, right? It doesn't matter if it's Mark Clogs or Joe Bloggs. We're going to get the exact same result.
Yes.
That's the difference between being vital versus functional.
Yeah. Okay, great. Hey, something we've talked about before, Daniel, is this 7-11-4 model, which I think is very relevant for the sales function. Could you just talk us through that?
Yeah, very relevant.
Yeah.
So 7-11-4 is how the brain gets to know, like, and trust people. So on the early stage humans, they had to have a very simple system in the brain that evolved for, how do I know that you're safe? How do I know that you're not going to damage me, harm me, throw a rock at me, right? How do I know that you're not going to use me as food, right? So the simple answer to that question from an evolutionary perspective is that if I've spent 7 hours with you and you've not tried to hurt me, if I've bumped into you 11 times and had 11 interactions with you, or if I've seen you in 4 separate locations, so 7-11-4, then there's a really good chance that you're part of my tribe, that you're a friend, not a foe, right? So if you imagine for 100,000 years, that's true. 7 hours, 11 interactions, 4 locations. Now, mind you, I'm summarizing a lot of research into this.
Yes.
But the human brain works on a gatekeeper called the hippocampus, and it basically, or the limbic system, and it closes out anyone who I've not spent 7 hours, 11 touch points, 4 locations. It massively discounts your opinion, right? If you came to me, let's say we'd never spent any time together.
Yep.
If you came to me and said, Daniel, I've got a recommendation for you on how you could improve your life, I'd go, oh, what are you trying to sell? Right?
Yes.
Because I don't know you. Now, if my best friend came to me and said, Daniel, I've got an idea on how you can improve your life, I'd say, really? Wow, okay. Tell me about it.
Yeah, right.
Because we've spent time, interactions, and touch points together. We've spent 7-11-4. I'll give you a classic example of this before I tell you how to use this. Classic example is in Bali. So I'm in Bali and I've spent 3 or 4 days at this particular hotel. And every time you leave the hotel, you got to walk through a market. And when you walk through the market, they start grabbing your hands and they start throwing products in front of you and check out this shirt and check out this, do you want some ice creams? Do you want a beer? Do you want a watch? Do you want a t-shirt? Do you want a rug? Do you want a kitchen sink? Literally a kitchen sink. So they're just throwing stuff at you. And on day one, you're trying to be polite. You're trying to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy. I'm meeting a friend. I'm going somewhere. And you talk to everyone. But after about 3 days of this, you just become immune to it. You become numb to it. Someone grabs your hand and you just pull your hand back, and someone throws a t-shirt in front of your face and you push it away. So you become very immune to it. And essentially that's kind of the marketplace we're in at the moment. We have a global busy marketplace with people trying to sell stuff and throw stuff in front of your face. Now, something interesting happened to me when I was in that market, which is I'm walking through that market, ignoring everyone. And I look across and I saw someone that I knew. And it was this guy called Bo, who I'd previously done business with for a year, several years earlier. We'd spent a lot of time in this particular campaign and we'd gotten to know each other reasonably well. Hadn't seen him for over a year or maybe 2-3 years. And I went, there's Bo. So I walked around, made my own way around him, went out of my way and tapped him on the shoulder. And I said, hey, Bo. And he kind of brushed me off thinking I'm one of the guys in the market.
Yep.
Turned around, saw my face and he went, Dan, how are you? And then I said, do you want to grab a beer? And he said, yeah, let's go grab a beer. So we walked down to the beach, grab a beer, have a catch up, 45 minutes. And then we go, actually, we should be doing something together. Why don't I send you an email, put you in touch with this person? There's this campaign and suddenly we're talking business, and it was effortless. So imagine that 2 scenarios. You've got hundreds of people trying to sell stuff, and you've got 2 people who've spent time together, 7-11-4. They know each other, and it's effortless.
Yes.
And that's the world that we live in at the moment. Now, here's the way you game the system. You game the system by creating digital content, because the brain doesn't know it's digital. David Bowie, Muhammad Ali, right? Robin Williams. The brain doesn't know that it's digital. So therefore, when I watch 7 hours, 11 interactions, 4 locations worth of content from you, then in my brain, you've 7-11-4'd me. You've ticked the box.
Yes.
So if you, right, let's say for example, so someone that I follow on social media is this kind of guy called Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm sure you've heard of
Yeah,
Gary
Gary
Vaynerchuk.
V. Yes,
Gary
pops
V,
up every
right?
day. Yep.
So I kind of, A, he pops up every day. B, it turns out that I speak on stage with Gary about every 2 years. Right. So
Mm.
Gary and I find ourselves speaking at the same event every 2 years. What's funny is when I see Gary, I'm like, oh, hey, Gary, how are you? I feel like I know him and all this sort of stuff. And he kind of looks at me blankly and he's like,
Right.
yeah, I know I've seen you somewhere, but I'm not sure where I've seen you. And it takes him a minute to connect and all that sort of stuff. Because I think he has 7-Eleven Ford me, but I haven't 7-Eleven Ford him.
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
read my books. So he's looking at me going, you might be a stranger. I'm looking at him going, I know you really, really well because I watch your stuff all the time.
Yes.
So when you use
Okay.
digital assets, when you create digital assets, as a salesperson in particular, if people have, let's say you're selling technology, some sort of technology product, and you're creating YouTube videos that explain how it works, the features, the advantages, the benefits, you're showing case studies, you're going out to your client who previously bought a month ago and showing a little video about how they're using it, right? If you're doing all of that kind of stuff and someone who's in the researching phase has come and watched some of those videos and they've looked at all your content, and then they come and talk to you, they're super pumped to talk to you and to buy from you. They're just as excited about you as they are about the product.
Yes. Yes. No, I can relate to that in a few instances where, I've followed folks and it feels like you know them, you spend hours with them. And you're going to
and they're looking at you like, excuse me.
Exactly. Or hopefully by doing this podcast, people will start coming to me and
That's right. There's 7-Eleven for, it's 7-Eleven for though. You'll get stopped on the street.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Daniel, we covered a lot of ground and covered a lot of the principles of KPI, key person of influence. Really, really appreciate that. And I got a lot out of that. I'm sure the listeners and the viewers would have as well. So really, thanks very much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure.
All right, Daniel, hopefully talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. And thanks everyone for listening. Bye for now.